Hello everyone, Ian Wishart here. It's a bit late now to wish you a happy new year, but Simon and I would like to wish you all a happy new season of the Take a Pew podcast, because this is the first episode of season 2. Hopefully, Simon, it'll be as much fun as season 1.
Yeah, I'm sure it will, mate. We've had 12 very different and equally interesting and fun conversations, and I really can't wait to crack on with the shows we've got lined up.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got some fab guests booked in. But what have you been up to since our last show? You celebrated the new year, of course, by getting COVID.
Yeah, that was a real pain, and it disrupted our recording schedule. Yeah. But it wasn't too bad, and it's all better now.
Oh, that's good. And of course, since we finished season 1, we've had Christmas. Did you have a good one? Nice big family gathering up in Beautiful, Norfolk, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right, boy. Yeah, we had a lovely time. What about you, mate?
Oh, we had a pretty quiet one. Although we did maintain our usual Christmas Day routine. In the morning, we all go out into the garden and cut back all the hedges.
Really?
Yeah. And then we have a lovely roast turkey with all the trimmings. But our brand new season starts right here, as we take the pew once again to Guildford to meet with the Reverend Dr. Ian Stackhouse.
Ian Stackhouse?
Oh, you're still going to be repeating names then, mate?
Oh, of course. And a Reverend and a Doctor. Ah, that's good, because I've got a bit of a bad back this week.
Yes, I don't think he's that kind of doctor, mate. But we'll find out right now, because this is Take a Pew with the Reverend Ian Stackhouse.
Dr. Stackhouse.
And here we are by the banks of the River Wey at Millmead, the Guildford Baptist Church. And we're in the hub, a great little area for the youth here, to meet with the person who has been senior pastor for 17 years, the Reverend Ian Stackhouse. Ian, welcome to the show, and please, take a pew.
Hello, Ian. It's great to be here. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself to our lovely listeners.
Well, thank you. Good to welcome you here to Guildford. I'm Ian Stackhouse. I'm 58 next month, married to Susanna, and we have 4 sons who are now all in adult life, John, Tim, Ben and Daniel, and we have a little granddaughter.
Nice.
She was born 8 months ago. Julia, I had to get that in. And I was ordained in 1992, so it's 30 years this September. And at the moment I'm the senior minister, as you said, of Guildford Baptist Church. So I've been here for nearly 18 years.
Right, wow. Excellent, thank you. And it may be a new season, but our aim remains the same, to get to know the person behind the job title. So as well as trotting along your path to becoming a pastor and getting a glimpse into your current ministry, we'd like to chat about your school days and your childhood, what you do in your spare time, and a few of your favourite things.
Yes, and in a brand new part of the show, we'll be exploring your perfect picnic. But fear not, listeners. We're still rolling out our popular features, Is It True? And Simon's Random Question. But first, Ian, I've been having these twinges in my lower back.
Simon!
Sorry, mate.
Anyway, Ian, let's dive in. Where did life all start for you? I believe it was somewhere north of the Canary Islands.
Well, I don't know where you got that from. Definitely not. I'm actually born and bred in the southeast of England. I was born actually in Wimbledon.
Oh, okay.
Spent one day there at St Teresa's Convent Hospital, and then my parents were living in West London in Barnes, and we moved out. Actually, we had a very brief little interlude up in Suffolk for about 6 months, I think it was, and then we moved out to Buckinghamshire. My father was working in Southall, where he was all of his life, in the steelworks, and we lived out in the Chilterns in a little place called Chalfont St Peter. That's where I grew up. Spent my first 18 years there.
Sounds very, very civilised. And I think technically that is north of the Canary Islands.
Technically, yes, it is technically. But,
quite a long way north, yes. Perhaps.
Well, my roots are in the north. Maybe we could talk about that. But so my father was from Burnley, hence the Burnley football curse. And then
you suffered from that, do you?
Yeah, and my mother was from South Wales. So my cultural roots are outside of the southeast of England. So I kind of see myself as a little bit of an outsider.
Sorry to interrupt you. You couldn't give us a quick Sean Dyche impression, could you?
Oh, no, I can't actually. I've been trying to perfect. One of my sons can do a really good impression of him, but I can't.
Anyway, so there we are on the Chow fonts, and I guess like most people, you had to do some education. So our first question for you is this. What were you like at school? Were you a little bit geeky? Or were you a little bit freaky? Or were you a little bit cheeky? What were you like at school?
What was I like at school? Well, I went to a Gravel Hill Junior School, which was, I only discovered recently, was what was called an experimental school, which I thought was quite interesting because I certainly didn't learn any English grammar or anything like that. It was one of these places where you had to feel your way into things rather than learn anything by rote. And I did actually go to a private school for about a year because Buckinghamshire was going through this whole thing about was it going to go comprehensive, was it grammar school?
Oh, yeah.
And so my parents decided to send me off to a private school, just in case, I suppose. So suddenly I was moved from this experimental school where everybody was sitting in circles to behind desks and a lectern and Mr. Lazenby with his chalk rubber board, just throwing it across the classroom and
I've heard of that. That actually happened.
Oh yes, I had lots of that. And then I did pass my 11 plus 12 plus. Yeah. So I went to the grammar school in Amersham. I was just so preoccupied with sport, to be honest. Right. I mean, I was, I did fairly well in class, but sport was what I lived for. And football, and then latterly tennis I got into. I was pretty well behaved, actually. My sister was, I don't know, this is going out live, isn't it?
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, my sister had a reputation. I mean, she was my big sister. And she was very protective of me. So, woe betide anybody who meddled with her little brother. So they would get slugged in the face. So she was constantly getting into trouble. And I was constantly hiding away, pretending that she wasn't my sister. I can still see her now being called out of the assembly by Mrs. Breeden, the head teacher. And she got up and she strutted out of the assembly hall right in front of the head, with a real attitude. And I'm thinking, oh, no. And everyone's looking at me and I'm thinking... So that took quite a while to get over in the counselling room. No, I love my sister, but she was... so I was pretty compliant. I sort of ticked all the boxes, whereas she was very much the rebel.
So talking of board rubbers, actually, we had teachers at our school who did that. One particular teacher, who should remain nameless, although I'm sure he's long gone off this mortal coil, but his favourite thing to launch was the board compasses.
Oof. Oh gosh, what those big
big wooden, almost like the things you use for laundry back then.
I remember those,
with the
because you imagine them
on the end,
swiveling, turning over.
You could literally kill someone.
You could easily.
That seems
it never happened.
Did it ever happen?
So tennis. Tell us about your tennis career as a child.
Well, eventually it was a failed career. I mean, football was my first love. I got into tennis with a guy called Dudley Georgeson. It was a boxer, actually, and he brought down this tennis squad down into the Chilterns. Yeah. And so he rounded up all the local kids, and so I started playing about the age of 12. And so we then, and a lot of us from that squad, we played sort of county level, national level. So and then I took it really seriously from about the age of 14, 15. I started training very seriously. I joined a squad up in London. So I used to go from Uxbridge all the way on the Piccadilly line on a Saturday morning, about 30 stops to near Cockfosters, get off there and then play 2 or 3 hours with this squad and then come all the way back. So I was really dedicated and I got time off school to practice. And then I was thinking of going...
pretty serious.
Oh yeah, and I did get to national level. I got to county finals and things like that. And then about 17. So this was all part of my story, really, because it crashed at about 17. I just didn't have the mental strength.
Did you used to lose your temper sometimes?
I was awful.
Yeah.
I was awful. I mean, I made McEnroe look angelic. No, really. I mean, my mother couldn't watch me play. I mean, I was really, and talk about blaspheming and all the rest of it. So I was, which people here now find that very amusing. So, but it was frustration, really. And then the bottom fell out of it. I was 17. I was playing down at Eastbourne in the Nationals. And I went out on the first round to play. I mean, the Sunday was a practice day, and I was playing really well. And I thought, gosh, I've got a chance here. And then the first morning, you wouldn't have thought I'd ever played tennis before. It was that was how bad it was. So I remember getting the train back from my digs in Eastbourne, coming back to London, throwing all my rackets into a cupboard, and I don't think I'd touched them for about another 3 or 4 years, really.
Wow,
So
okay.
that was
a disappointing trip to the seaside.
yeah, it was. Yeah.
And what were you going to a church or anything when you were
No,
young?
so I didn't grow up in church. So that was really the beginning of my, I basically had nothing to do. I've been playing tennis all the time. But having said that, my father had converted I was about 13, 14. He converted to Roman Catholicism out of the blue. I think he was looking for the disciplines of the church. And I think it was genuine. Then he had a massive nervous breakdown. And he was in and out of psychiatric care most of my teenage life, really. And he never went back to the church, and he never spoke about it until the last 2 months of his life when he came to live with us.
Goodness,
It was a taboo subject, because I then subsequently become a Christian, and, which he struggled with a great deal. But what it gave me was a little bit of exposure when I was about 14, 15 into the world of Roman these were Irish Catholics living in Durrall's Cross in Buckinghamshire. And he was doing a lot of work with St Vincent de Paul's Society. So he was going down to Lourdes 2 or 3 times a year and taking a lot of people on these big jumbulance buses. He got into the front row of the Pope's visit in 81, was it? At Southwark. So I had a little bit of a glimpse then into that world. And so hence now, when I'm amongst Roman Catholics, I feel very at home. I was with somebody yesterday up in Blackfriars in Oxford, who's a Dominican, and I just feel very at home in that world. Although it didn't really stick at that point, it was the beginning, I guess, of a little bit of my journey.
And you talked about becoming a Christian at some point. When did that happen?
So that was 81, nearly 40 years ago, just over 40 years ago. And there was a big thing happening in the Chilterns at that time. Across denominations. There were kids coming like me out of nowhere. None of us had backgrounds in Christian faith, and all found ourselves in churches, and we were all like ripe for the picking, really. And there was a lot of emotion. This was 1981, so this was the height of the charismatic renewal.
Right, okay.
So there's a lot of, the place was packed where I was going. It's a church I went back to 10 years later to become assistant minister. And as I say, it was a lot of young people my age, which was great. What's there not to like? I walked into a church first time, and saw these young people and saw these pretty girls. I'm thinking, I think I'll stick around here for a while. This is all right.
Yeah, can put up with this.
Yeah, it was great.
So it was quite a lot going on then throughout all those years, in the family and school and sports and everything. So as we look back over that, we've got another question for you. And our question is...
What's your fondest childhood memory? What's your fondest of all your childhood memories? What's your fondest?
Oh, yes. Ian, what's your fondest childhood memory?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I've got lots of nice memories. The one that comes to the surface, sorry, I probably should have prepared this, shouldn't I, a bit more? The one that comes to the surface, I had a very eccentric uncle called Lewis, and he was a Welshman, lived in London. But I used to meet up with him at my auntie's. All my aunties lived down in Porthcawl, seaside down in South Wales. So we had all of our holidays down there. So I practically had a sort of Welsh childhood, really. I remember him taking me out to play golf. So again, sport, and I was probably about 12 or something, so I was hacking around the course. But I remember chipping, he was such a colourful character. Apparently he was a great opera singer. I didn't know this until recently. Anyways, I was playing golf with him, and I can remember chipping onto the green, and it went in the hole, and there were guys around or whatever. And he ran over to me, and he grabbed me, and he put me on his shoulder, and he marched me around. Well, I must have been a bit younger than that, because how did he put me on his shoulder? Anyway, he made a big scene about it. So
sounds like a great moment. I love the way that moments like that, little moments like that, just stick in the mind.
Yeah, when you said that, I just thought, that just came to the surface.
And it does
very
tend to be,
quickly.
you talked about preparing, but actually I think with that, it does tend to be something does pretty much come straight to your mind, or one or two things.
Yeah, I had some great moments watching Burnley. Not many, but I had one or two moments watching Burnley. Because we used to go to all the London matches. So my dad would take us to, West Ham, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs. I went to all of those matches. And we went to Arsenal-Burnley, which was the game I think that got us relegated. But after the game, we went under because the hybrid was beautiful, wasn't it? It was sort of 1920s art.
Never went to hybrid.
No, it did. It was.
Deco,
Yeah, it was lovely.
and they had all the marble floors. And we went under the stadium into the reception, and then we went to the dressing rooms, and then I met all the Burnley team.
Oh wow!
And we got all the autographs, and to this day I cannot find this program anywhere.
No. It'll turn up.
Not
somewhere.
that anybody would want it, but
Well, that might be worth a bit.
That'd be worth 2 or 3
so that was a
pounds,
great
I think,
moment.
at least.
Yeah.
No, very good.
Thank
All
you.
right, so
Thank you.
finished with childhood, and then you went on to further education. Did you go to uni?
Yeah, I did. I went to Durham University.
Okay, yeah.
I had 3 years up there, and then I just stayed on a year to do a teacher training course up there.
Oh right. Okay.
And that's where I met Susanna. So she was at St John's College, and I was at University College. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So what did you study?
I did a joint honours. I did history and politics.
Oh, okay. Sounds quite serious. And then obviously you decided that you were going to be a teacher.
So I did teacher training. I got onto that quite late, actually, and then I missed the deadline, and then managed to get myself in on the course. So I did a year, taught in a school, comprehensive school in Belmont, just outside of Durham, and then got a job in Kingston for 3 years.
Oh, right. In Surrey.
In Surrey,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at Kingston Grammar. And I loved it. I mean, I just loved teaching, loved being in the classroom. I think I could have had a really good career as a teacher, but I already knew, really almost probably towards the end of my university days, that there was a sort of a pull or a calling to go into the church. In fact, my teacher trainer supervisor, he said you'd be a really good teacher, he said, if you gave it proper time. He said except you spend so much time in the church, you know.
So how did you obviously bit the bullets at some point then?
So I did. So I then went to seminary for 2 years. I did the old Cambridge diploma, which was my first foray into theological education, and I really found myself in. I mean, I love history. I read more history now than I've ever read. But at that point, I got into theological studies, and I really it was life-changing. I mean, it felt like another conversion, really.
Talk to us about denominations and that sort of thing, and getting involved in a church.
Yeah, so the studies, I did 2 years, and then that carried on at the same institution over in Northwood at London. Well, it was London Bible College in those days.
Yeah. Okay.
London School of Theology, because then I went about 20 minutes away down the valley back to Amersham. So these were all independent churches. They were kind of part of a network of house churches. It was this church I went to was a former Baptist church. So it was an old Baptist chapel, but it was an independent, charismatic, house church, really, where it was pitching its tent.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, at that sense, I wasn't denominational until I came here, actually. And then I became a Baptist when I came here in 2004. And then my mother really accepted me because she thought I was a proper minister then, because she didn't have a faith, bless her. But when I got my PhD and I got here and I got ordained, in terms of denominationally, I noticed that she kind of liked that, really. She could tell her friends, her son was a proper minister,
sounds like a proper
rather than one of these house churches, and she couldn't quite sort of...
Yes,
she couldn't
that's
quite
interesting.
Sort of
we haven't
categorise.
We haven't followed that path before. It's always been some sort of ordination at the end of training, which may have been in one's 40s or whatever. But to actually just be a minister of some sort for quite a while, then that was, I guess.
Yeah, 11 years actually, and then it was ordained in the sense we had an induction service and all the rest of it, but it wasn't quite the same as you'd have. But what I liked about it gave me a huge freedom. I mean, I can remember. Going to the church, and they didn't even really give me a description. And the minister who was there at the time, very, very dear mentor of mine, he was asked, "Well, what is he?" And he said, "Well, we don't know yet." He said, "Let's find out." And at the time, I was outraged. I thought, "What do you mean? I've just given up? They don't know what I am." And I came to see the wisdom of it. I thought, you know what? Let's just do some ministry and see what it really is.
Yeah.
So,
and so, before you came here, were you leading a church?
So I was assistant there, and then Stuart moved on, and I took on from him in 96. So I had about 4 or 5 years leading there. I then was exploring on a Wednesday afternoon, actually. It felt a bit naughty. I was nipping off to Princess Risborough to explore the Anglican route. I was thinking maybe this was where I should go. I was on a sort of journey, to use a phrase, because I was kind of kicking quite a bit against some of the, not so much the charismatic, I was just some of the flaky stuff, I suppose, I was kicking against. I got selected, So that was good. And they were going to fast track me. They even found me a little parish up in North Bucks, up in Waddesdon Way. And the day I got the letter from the Bishop of Buckingham was the day I knew I could never become an Anglican. So I was at Wycliffe last night speaking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which I love. So I love being amongst Anglicans, but I just knew I could not be an Anglican.
Right.
For all sorts of reasons. But I'm so glad I turned the stone over. And from there on, I left that church, which is a whole story in itself. And I was in a little bit of a wilderness for about 18 months. We went off to the States. I finished off my doctoral work. And then I got a call from somebody who was assigned to being an interim pastor here. So he put me in touch with the elders here, and then the kind of rest is history.
Right,
really.
yeah. And nearly 18 years on, you're still here.
Yeah, and it was a great marriage. It was a great fit, actually. The opportunities it's given me, the people I love, and
big changes over the last 18 years.
Yeah, lots of changes. Yeah, it's been endlessly from day one. It's been endlessly fascinating. People I've met, Iranian refugees from the very first week I got here. Burundian who was caught up in the genocide. They was working in the co-op in Madrid Road, and I thought, this is it. That's what I was looking for.
Yes.
I was wanting to be,
It feels like proper pastoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And kind of mission, and I'm a sort of backslidden missionary, really. I mean, I was going to go on the mission field at 23 to South America. Most pastors are backslidden missionaries, really. Backslidden evangelists.
Yeah.
So it really ticked that as well. I thought, this is great. This is a really,
nice.
and it's been like that as long as I've been here.
Yeah. And it's a big old building, at least,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, it's a major complex.
It is,
As we
yeah.
came out, lovely cafe that you come in.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, so Millmead in the 70s was kind of the epicenter of charismatic renewal. David Pawson was here.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
So, the queues really were back to the A3.
Wow, really?
They've got all these stories, but they probably really were. I mean, the whole world has passed through here. And the building in its day was state of the art. It was, the building, the Millmead Centre that they built. And then the building got very tired. So I got here in 2004, and I thought, gosh, this is a really old, dreary kind of building. I mean, the people are great, but the building looks... So even as early as then, I was thinking, well, we need to do something. We can't do nothing with this place. And then as it was, we get the team that we had at that time, we all felt, this is right. We need to do something really major here. But
Very
the church, was kind of
place,
living also under this, when you've had halcyon days like that, it's very difficult for churches to move on when they're always, referring back to the good old days.
Right.
So the building was all part of that, letting go, really, and honouring the past. I mean, gosh, it wouldn't even compare with what was happening then. But letting go of it, honouring it, letting go of it, and moving on.
So don't get accused the A3 now.
No.
Why did that?
To the river would be good.
Was that just kind of like a natural thing that kind of dwindled a bit?
I mean, I think again it was in the 70s. So this was the churches across the country.
Just moved on.
There was a lot of renewal, in the church.
Yeah.
David had a very sort of unique ministry, teaching ministry. I mean, his tape ministry went out across the globe.
He was very much a teacher, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. So at that time, there wasn't a lot of that around. So,
right.
We actually did a service for him the other day. He passed away Ascension Day last year, as only David would on Ascension Day. Bless him. He wouldn't mind me saying that. His family wouldn't mind me saying that. And then, of course, his wife Enid passed away. And then we did a joint memorial for them recently. I'm really glad we had a chance to do that because we couldn't do it the year before. I'm told that the YouTube of that has already gone out to about 90,000 hits. Yeah. So that tells you the scope of his teaching ministry, particularly in the Southeast Asia.
So you do all that, but it's still a busy old place, still a very popular place, but you do plenty of stuff other than just that you're pastoring here, don't you, in terms of writing in particular and speaking and teaching. Talk us through what else you get up to.
Yeah, so I've been writing pretty much consistently since about turn the millennium, I suppose. I've been writing.
What sort of things have you?
I've been writing, Simon, really I write to survive, to be honest.
Right, yeah.
I only write when I'm in crisis. But since I'm in crisis a lot, I write a lot. I'm kind of seriously, I do write to reflect and to process. So my thesis was making sense of some of the stuff I just talked about church growth and all that.
Okay,
that sort of business model applied to the church. I was critiquing that in my thesis, and that came out as a book. just before I got here, actually, gospel-driven church. And I did warn people it was quite technical.
Yeah.
But because I was their new minister, they all bought it. And then they said, we don't understand what you're on about.
Yeah, this is quite technical.
So then I wrote a lot more popular books that my mother could understand. And
Mainly
I wrote
romantic fiction.
Yeah. Well, I did actually try a little novella once. It's never seen the light of day. I did write a little love story, but that's sort of stuck on my laptop somewhere.
Okay.
But I wrote a book called The Day Is Yours. That was my first sort of foray into sort of what I call sort of semi-popular, sort of spiritual writing. And I was really happy with that book. Slow Spirituality in a Fast-Moving World. That was published in 2007. And then I wrote a book called Primitive Piety, which was all about developing a more gritty sort of spirituality, you know, in a suburban context where you can, if you're not careful, you can just have a very nice Christianity. So how do you have a Christianity that really works in the real world and is gritty and a little bit rougher at the edges? And then more latterly, so in my 25th year of ordination, I wrote a book to my younger self, letters to a young pastor.
Yeah.
And these came out as a series of letters. And actually it was to myself originally about little situations that, you know, every pastor faces. And then this character formed, actually. So I ended up writing to, and he had a family and he had children, and just taught my way through various little incidents. So he was writing to a senior figure, which was me, and I'm writing to my younger self. And, so I had a lot of fun with that, and I was really pleased. I had some good reviews on that.
Yeah,
and,
that sounds quite charming, doesn't it?
Adrian Plass did a very nice commendation for it, and then I wrote some reflections one winter on the Psalms. I've been praying the Psalms pretty much the last 15 years. And I wrote, every morning I just wrote a little reflection, about 300-400 words, stuck it with a bit of the psalm, and then just put a whole book together. So that came out a couple of years ago. Yeah, and then I wrote something to do during the COVID last couple of years. Around some questions that I was raising about that, but I couldn't find a publisher. So I stuck it on an Amazon ebook.
Yeah.
So Candy, who you just met, she worked out how to do it on an Amazon ebook. So that was my first foray into ebooks. And actually it's great because the royalties are a lot better. 90% royalties.
Oh, right.
So that sounds...
That's my little career in writing.
Yeah, that's great. Keeps you busy. And you do...
and then speaking in different places. And
travel around a bit?
Yeah, I've done a lot of, not the last 2 years, but I've travelled with this church. We have a lot of world partners in different parts of the world, and also my own contacts. So I've been really fortunate to travel to some pretty dangerous spots. Pakistan I've been 3 or 4 times, Colombia, Romania I was going consistently to a university out there to teach, which was linked to a Baptist church. West Africa I've been a number of times, in Ghana. Ghana's a particular country I love. So I've been really fortunate.
Some great places there.
Yeah,
I've never quite made it to Colombia, I must say, but I was threatened with having to go to Bogota.
Colombia's a fantastic place. We had a guy, he's a good friend of mine actually, he's no longer there. Well, he still travels in and out of Colombia, and he was working with us with a group called Latin Link. He just went where angels fear to tread and was caught up in some incredible situations and meeting some of the top leaders of these terrorist organizations. And so he took me around to some displaced communities in northern Colombia. Right. That was very humbling to see some of these communities that have been taken off their land, you know, because of the drug barons. And I mean, there was one community I met, the pastor had been shot. I met his wife. She had 14 kids.
Gosh.
Running a little kiosk to make ends meet. The community have all been big farmers, were now pig farmers. Very, very tragic stories that they share with you. And yet at the same time, you just incredible humour and laughter. And
It's a bit like Godalming in many ways.
Do you know what? I was just thinking that.
Yeah, that's what was going through my mind. So that's great. Well, obviously a busy chat, but when you do get some downtime, some leisure time, we talked about following Burnley FC. What else did you get up to?
Well, I do the usual stuff around. This part of the world is lovely, as you know. So walking. My wife and I, do a lot of walking. Singing, I did for a while.
Okay.
My mother was a singer. She had a beautiful
the Welsh
voice.
connection, of course.
Yeah,
and Uncle Lewis as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then I discovered that actually, I know I could sing until somebody said, they said, you can sing. One of my first Sundays here, I led the final hymn or whatever. You can really sing. And then they said, you should have some lessons.
You've got potential.
No question how to take that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did actually have some lessons, and I found that so therapeutic.
Yeah.
relaxation, really, for me.
Yeah.
So much so that my boys at the time, they just said, Dad, when you come home on a Friday, you're a different person. It's exhilarating. So I count that as
Yeah, very good.
So have you
therapy,
performed, done
relaxation.
solos?
Yeah,
and
I've done a
things?
bit. I put on a concert here with some of the band here who were very gracious to sort of come alongside me, and great musicians. So I had a bit of a head start, and we put on a couple of evenings actually did some psalms.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of reflection on the psalms, and then we'd sing some of the psalms. So these are a collection of songs that I'd heard over the years.
And that sort of genre, or do you break out into the odd bit of Springsteen? Or?
Well, Springsteen is my very favourite.
Is it? Well,
You touched it. Yeah,
it was a prophetic moment.
it was a prophetic
It was,
moment.
yeah.
Springsteen is just a genius.
Yeah. There we go.
I mean, they're quite eclectic, really. All sorts
yeah.
from fairly highbrow to sort of pop stuff. I have to confess, I'm not a great fan of Christian music.
That's great. Well, it's a really good journey so far, Ian. Thank you. And it's very nearly time for us to unfurl our special Take Pew picnic blanket for your perfect picnic. But before that, we'd like to play a little game we call My Favourite Things.
My favourite things.
Yes, a very simple game, Ian. We'll give you a series of categories, and you just have to tell us your favourite thing in each one.
Right.
So straightforward. Our first category, and I think I might have an inkling as to what your answer to this might be. Our first category is always your favourite book of the Bible.
What would your inkling be on that?
Well, you've talked about Psalms quite a lot. So.
Yeah, that's true.
And Psalms is by far our most popular
My
choice,
favourite
isn't it?
book of the Bible is usually the text I'm working on at
Right,
any one
okay.
time.
Oh, okay.
It becomes very present to me. So last night I was preaching on the book of Jonah, and I thought, what a brilliant story. I mean, what a grumpy old man. Maybe that's why I identified with it. It's so humorous and so powerful, and such a short little book, isn't it?
It is quite a snappy little story, isn't it?
It's great,
It's not a
yes.
saga, is it? It's,
Yeah, you're right. Psalms would be but that's a unique book, isn't it, in the Bible?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's very good. We'll go with Jonah. We haven't had that
All right,
before.
Yeah, Jonah's a great one. Yeah, I'm inspired. I have to get back
good.
have a look through that. Yeah. Here's an interesting one for you, Ian. Your favourite chair?
My favourite chair? That is a good question. Well, we have a chair at home.
Office
I don't
chair
know
or
what it's
pew?
called, but it's like a single chair.
Okay.
It's got a high back and arms. I don't know if it's Regency style.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, you're getting technical now.
Oh, yes.
Right, yeah.
Well, you need to talk to my wife. My wife has
Yeah.
a ministry in rehabilitating old chairs. She takes pity on them, sneaks them into the house,
Okay.
and then she does upholstery on them.
Oh, okay. Right.
And she's brilliant.
What a fortuitous question.
There's very good.
Something going on here.
You're in the spirit. I can tell you. You're moving.
Okay, our next, our third category has always been a top five, and this now for season 2, unless we've been tipped off that it's of no interest to our guests whatsoever, we're going to go with a category which has come up a couple of times in season 1, and that is your top 5 films.
Ooh, top 5 films. Okay. A River Runs Through It
Oh, okay.
is probably one of them. Got to be up there with as a
Robert
Robert
Redford.
Redford film. Yeah, it's about a Presbyterian minister and his 2 sons. Doesn't sound very exciting, but
I remember that one.
it's
I've seen it's nice. Very nice. Great,
set in Montana, which is a part that I love.
great cinematography, I think.
Yeah,
Not that I know much about it. But. Okay.
Actually, in that sense, Legend of the Fall I also like, which is set out in the Montana area.
Right.
And
So your top 5 films based in Montana.
yeah, Montana 5.
Yeah.
The Chosen, which I don't know if you've seen, not the recent one. So this is a novel by Chaim Potok. He wrote all his novels in Brooklyn in New York, in the Jewish community there. And The Chosen is about a Hasidic boy and a boy from a Reformed synagogue. Both fathers had both. So there's a theme here. They had rabbis who were fathers, and it's the tensions of their relationship. And that's a really, really good
I
film.
haven't come across that. Okay.
A different category completely. And my wife and I watched it the other day. Some Like It Hot.
Oh, right, okay.
gosh.
With Tony Curtis
Yeah.
Yes.
and
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe. Of
Monroe,
course.
yes.
I mean, just
course.
Yeah.
priceless. I
Yeah.
mean, just love that sort of humour.
Good one.
So that's another one.
The last one.
And oh gosh, I'm sure there's loads of films I love. Yes, Merchant Ivory film. Sorry, I'm quizzing you now.
It sounds like
Merchant Ivory sounds like book. E.M. Foster novel.
Room with a View.
Room with a View.
Well done, mate.
Yeah,
That's very good.
Be up
Yeah,
there.
Very good.
I think we've done well
We've
now.
done.
I think we've certainly got
Is that right?
6, isn't
Room
it?
with a View of Montana.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
there we go.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, for a bit of a change, I'd like to do a top 5 as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I'll settle for a top 3.
Okay.
Now, Ian,
Top-
you used to be a history teacher, so your top 3 periods of history.
Well, again, it probably depends what I'm reading at any one time. I'm reading at the moment a lot of stuff about, wait for it, the period just after the Civil War in Russia.
Oh,
1919, 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, just brutal. All about the big families that then went into exile because of the revolution. I mean, that whole period, First World War, collapse of those big empires, I find as a really interesting period. Interwar period, I know a lot about. Sort of late 30s and then into the early part of the war, particularly as it affected France. I'm very fascinated in French history at that time.
Okay, gosh, okay.
And then probably the Tudors, the Stuarts actually.
Stuarts.
Tudors and Stuarts would be another.
Now, some say final category, and it's always a multiple choice. I'll give you 3 possible answers.
Right.
And some say that this part of the show itself is a bit of a test. So we'd like to know your favourite test. So 3 possible answers are an Ashes test match, a COVID lateral flow test, or the New Testament.
Well, I'm supposed to say the New Testament, aren't I?
we don't want to go with the boring
But
answer.
it certainly wouldn't be the middle one. And then the first one I would be interested in. Yeah, an Ashes test.
Yes.
Yeah, I would be interested in that.
At Lord's, presumably, yeah.
The Oval, actually. I went to the Oval test where they won the Ashes.
Oh, yes.
2000, whatever that was. Long time ago now. The Freddie Flintoff one, yeah.
That was
yes,
quite a day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And evening, by all accounts. But very good. So cricket knocks the New Testament over the boundary. There we go. Good.
Ooh.
It's nice. Very good. Very good. Well, some excellent choices there, I think, Ian. And that brings us to our brand new part of the show.
Yes, we've upgraded our lunchbox feature to an entire picnic. And all we want to know is...
What would you pick in your perfect picnic if the picking were up to you? Would you be sticking in some finger-licking chicken, or would you be silly and pick Piccalilli? Tell us, what would you choose?
There we go. Yes. Yes, what would you pick for your perfect picnic? But before we get to the contents of your picnic hamper, Ian, where would you go for your perfect picnic?
That's a good question. I tell you, I'd like to go Richmond Park.
Oh, no, okay.
Yeah. In fact, I have had a picnic at Richmond Park with Susanna and some of our lads quite a long time ago. I used to teach near to Richmond Park, and I used to run a cross-country group on a Saturday morning,
Yeah.
which was lovely because the mist would be coming up, and we'd set them all off, and so I had nice memories of Richmond Park.
You get lots of deer in Richmond.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
do.
you do.
Yeah. So they might eat the
They might sort
eat the picnic. Yeah.
Be interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure I would put cross-country and lovely in the same sentence. But there we go. All right, so we're imagining that we're in Richmond Park, surrounded by deer and lovely open spaces and quite a few big old trees. And the birds are chirping in the branches. We rolled out our rug. We open up your hamper. What would you like to have in there?
Well, my wife Susanna makes a fantastic chicken pie,
Sounds great. We like that.
so that would be in there. I think.
Yeah.
For a nice big crusty.
Yeah,
Pastry
a lot of
pie.
pastry.
Oh,
yeah, love that.
Yeah.
I actually like. I mean, would you call it a hock of ham?
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds more. That's more meat, isn't it?
That's
It's
okay.
not
Get
very-
as
very-
much
very-
meat as you like.
that's
It's your
right.
perfect
Yeah.
picnic.
It's my picnic, isn't it? Yes. Potatoes with lots of butter and parsley, all very unhealthy. I'd have that in there. Depending, presumably you can put plates out and everything, and
You can do
It's
what
fairly-
you like.
needs to be quite
it's fairly
hot.
sort of civilised.
Candelabra, all sorts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We actually have got we bought one of these big hampers.
There we go.
Picnic hampers.
Yeah.
So we've hardly ever used it. We bought it years ago.
Well, here's good motivation to think about it. Yeah.
Nice bottle of wine, white wine.
Yeah, nice
Put
wine.
in there.
Yeah, chicken, white wine.
What else would I put?
I hate ham hock does lend itself to Piccadilly.
I
hate to say it.
You mentioned Piccadilly, so I do like Piccadilly.
So
I
you are
really
going to be
do
silly
like.
and say Piccadilly.
I knew a Peruvian pastor actually used to come over here, and he loved Piccadilly. So every time I went out to Peru a few times, I had to take a jar of Piccadilly through customs. So crisps, in there.
Bit of pud, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say yogurt, but that sounds really boring, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, not if you poured it on something. If you had some
An
nice
apple cake. My sister-in-law lives down in
apple
Exeter.
cake.
Makes the most fantastic, not apple crumble. Well, she makes a good apple crumble as well, but she makes a really fantastic apple cake. We had a big family gathering recently because her little grandson was over from Australia, so she made a apple cake to celebrate that. So that went down pretty quickly. There has to be some chocolate in there somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
You know, as a sort of an after, with coffee afterwards.
So a slab of chocolate.
Slab of chocolate,
Yeah.
Fruit, not just to be healthy, but just because it's not, and it's nice to have it as part of a picnic, isn't it?
Yeah. Gosh, well, that would certainly keep you going, wouldn't it?
Well, that would keep you going for a half hour, wouldn't it?
For half a day.
Elderflower would be nice. If I didn't have the wine and I was driving, I think, okay, the elderflower, I really like elder. And my wife makes a really nice elderflower, so she'll go and pick elderflower.
Oh, really?
Okay.
From up here in the mount.
Yeah.
And then she'll soak it, and she'll buy all sorts of bicarbonate and whatever. So that would go in there as well.
So there's a lot of homemade stuff, which is lovely, actually.
My wife is a brilliant. I mean, all of her family. They are masters of homespun. Everything, clothing, food, objects. They just So I've been very blessed to have.
And you could take a few upholstered chairs with you, so you wouldn't even have to sit on the ground, would you?
That's right.
That'd be perfect. Well, I must say that all sounds rather idyllic.
It does, doesn't it?
I hope that you get to enjoy such a picnic very soon.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But back to the show. And we've talked about the past and the present, so let's quickly look at the future.
So, Yassine, what would you like us to be talking about if we were doing this show 12 years from now?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think if I was to go down a sort of serious track, I'd like to know, what's become of this. There's a kind of quite a big agenda at the moment, progressive agenda. I'd like to have some.
In what sort of area do you mean? What?
Culturally, I'm thinking about our young people, our young
okay.
Culturally, which way that's all going. There's a lot of. Take the whole thing of gender fluidity and identity, and all that sort of identity politics. Where's that got to?
Okay, and then what else? Maybe.
Well, always Burnley. I would have talked about how, but I suspect we won't be in the league by then.
We may have some rich owner taking you over by then.
No, never. We've got an American owner now, but that'd be interesting. I'd like to know where that's all got to. In 12 years' time.
Yeah. I'd like to be talking about how Burnley had won the Premier League.
Yeah,
presumably.
exactly.
I don't think that's going to be our conversation somehow, but...
FA Cup, maybe.
Yeah. And what about you? Maybe you could have taken tennis back up and...
Yeah, I'm still playing a little bit
surprise
now.
win in the Surrey
in
Seniors.
the Surrey Senior competition. Yeah, now we're in the world of fantasy. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
And probably, do you see yourself still being in a pastoral role?
I think I'd probably these days. I mean, years ago, when somebody said you're going to retire, I thought, no, I'll never retire. I'll just down in the pulpit or whatever. And it wouldn't be a bad way to go. But I can see now that you would want to change the pace of your life.
Right.
I mean, I think, I do feel a lot in a day. So I don't think that's going to change. I'll always be that way. But I think you do need to find a different way of being. And I'd like to invest a lot more time. And I am hoping, I'm trying to invest a lot more time in other people and pass things on and pass the baton on.
Yeah.
And I have a real love for that and passion, a real passion for, particularly for younger people coming into ministry. And hence the book I wrote, because I have a real passion for that, because there's not many maps around, and you need a lot of help, because it's a great life, but it's a tough life.
Okay, well, we wish you every blessing wherever life does take you, Ian. And that brings us to the point in the show where we like to get a bit more intellectual and, dare I say, a bit more spiritual. Now, in a moment, we'd love it if you could bring us your spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Yes, but before that, we'd like to enlist your help in addressing another Bible-based conspiracy theory. I must say that in previous episodes, we've cracked some pretty significant issues.
We have,
Yeah, we haven't we? And we call this part of the show...
Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
Now, on this occasion, it is very relevant that we've talked about picnics, because the theory we'd like to ask you about concerns a very famous picnic, the feeding of the 5,000. And it appears that archaeologists working on a site close to the Sea of Galilee have recently unearthed a very old, almost fossilised scrap of a pizza box, as well as a flyer for 2 for 1 the following Tuesday. And we can suggest, based on that the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 was actually achieved through one of the earliest and one of the largest pizza deliveries. So, Reverend Ian Stackhouse.
Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
Yes, is it true?
Is what true?
There was a lot there, wasn't there?
Is it true the feeding of the 5,000 was enabled by a massive pizza delivery?
But do you mean by that, is the feeding of the 5,000, did it actually happen?
No, I mean, do you think there's any truth in this scrap of a pizza box? That
Oh,
they
I see,
found?
right, yeah, no.
No? Well, I think it's because it was Roman occupation, right? So they would have had pizzas, presumably, from being Italian.
They'd
I
have
see,
pizza ovens,
yeah,
wouldn't
I
they?
see,
They must have
I see where you're going with this.
Yes,
Yeah,
must have
but,
So, I mean, I'm just thinking about how it could possibly be right.
yeah.
And they would have had, probably, if it's anything like now, there would have been one takeaway nearby.
Yeah, there must have been.
Pizza
I'm
or
sure if
something.
you write a book about it and stick it
Yeah.
out there, it'll be a
I'm
best,
sure,
a bestseller. Yeah.
Put Dan Brown's name on it, and
Yeah,
people
exactly.
believe
I
anything.
think so,
Yeah, new hypotheses. Or the,
And there's also, I mean, when you have, the more you think about it, the more possible it is.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
there's always
Yeah.
loads of pizza left over, isn't there?
Yeah, no,
So there
definitely.
would, as there was, and they'd go around and collect up
yeah.
all the pizza
so
crusts.
that
and-
explains that.
crusts.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
never thought about
Crusts could
that.
have been left
Yeah,
over.
you,
So I-
you could be onto something.
Yeah.
yeah. So we think
Yeah.
it's unlikely, I think, is what you're saying. Yeah.
But if you would like to construct that as a theory, try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Anything's possible, apparently.
yeah. So I think.
Anyway, well, there we go.
So I think
with-
to summarise, I think that was a pepper phony.
yes.
Oh dear.
And with that, Ian, perhaps you could bless us with your spiritual pearl of wisdom.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
There's a passage in Matthew which I think has some wisdom attached to it. So Jesus sends out the 72 disciples and preach the message of the kingdom, to heal the sick, cast out demons, and they come back and they're rejoicing because, even the demons submit to us in your name, Lord. And I'm just really taken by what Jesus says to them. So, he's thrilled too, and he's thrilled the fact that this has come to these disciples, not to the wise and the learned, but to these kind of children, as he calls them. And then he says to them, rejoice not that the demons submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And it really stuck with me. And I preached it the other day in the congregation here, and I know it resonated with a lot of people because we're a very busy church, very active church, and I love that. It's great, and I love the fact we're into mission, but sometimes it can overtake to the point where you get your kicks out of doing the stuff rather than just that sort of fundamental identity of who we are, and our names are written. What does Isaiah say? Our names are engraved on the palm of His hand. We're loved by God, and that's the source of all the stuff that we do, really. So it's over 18 years here, and previous to that, the busyness of the church, the activity of the church has been right at the fore, and I'm not about to knock that, but to be careful that we don't lose sight. And then, of course, once we stay in that place of, he actually says, rejoice that your names are written in heaven, that becomes just a source of endless possibilities when you're working and living as a community out of that sort of celebration of what God is doing in your life and has done in your lives. So yeah, that's my little nugget.
It's a spiritual pearl of wisdom.
Well, thank you very much for that little nugget, Ian. Wonderful. And that almost brings the show to a close. But I'm sad to report that despite some pretty fierce campaigning on my part in the Take a Pew production office...
What, your kitchen?
Don't ruin the illusion, mate.
Sorry, mate.
Yes, despite my best efforts, we are still going to end the show with the farce that we call...
Simon's Random Question.
Simon, what's your random question for Ian?
Well, Reverend Dr. Ian Stackhouse, my random question for you is this. God, of course, created the universe and everything in it. But which 5 things would you like to uncreate? And before you suggest perhaps the obvious things like sin, suffering, sadness, and Swindon, the rules for my random question are that you're not allowed to choose anything that begins with S.
Good question. Uncreation. Wow.
5 things to uncreate.
Not beginning with S.
Yeah. Which is a shame, because there are times when I would quite like to uncreate Simon.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you were going to say that.
But I'm not allowed to do that.
Thank you, mate. Yeah.
So you can't say slough even. I actually like slough.
I
Yeah.
was thinking more down the path of wasps or something.
Yeah. well,
Okay.
Things you'd like to uncreate, like those metal teapots that you get in cafes that never work and always pour. And,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that sort of thing.
Quite like
Yeah.
for them not to exist.
I'm going to sound like a real Luddite here, but I would love to uncreate emails
Oh, nice.
Nice.
because I
nice.
can remember, a world without them, and it seemed to work okay.
That's a very
I'm,
good
I'm
shout.
not,
Good
I'm not a
shout.
Luddite, but
shout.
I wouldn't mind uncreating. I wouldn't mind uncreating a lot of technology.
Yeah.
Actually, now I really am a Luddite. I'd like to uncreate modern football. So, gosh, now I'm sounding like a really old geezer, aren't I? I'd like to uncreate diving in football.
Oh,
right.
okay, yeah.
To be
yeah,
specific.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And all this stuff about, well, he had a right to go down. What do you mean he had a right to go down?
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
So,
go
yeah.
back to the old Billy Bremner
Now I'm
days.
starting to get into a rant. I'm trying to avoid certain things because it then sounds like I'm living in the wrong century.
No, that's all right.
It is.
It's a tricky question,
It
isn't
is,
it?
it is.
5.
difficult, really.
How do you get 5?
Well, there's a
Yeah,
couple
well,
there,
you
yeah.
don't have to do 5.
Don't
I
have
think
to
you're
do
doing
5.
quite well. I said wasps, actually, but they do...
Well, they're part of the ecosystem.
Yeah,
aren't
you're
they?
the
They do a
nature
Yeah,
job,
of
I've
and
I've
you
actually
can't-
got nothing
yeah.
against
No, you
wasps.
don't have anything
Wasps and
against-
insects
What about
generally are-
mosquitoes, then? What about mosquitoes?
Well, again, they're part of the ecosystem. They're a food source for other. So I think you're on slightly dodgy ground if you're talking about things like that.
I think when it comes to nature, you could probably make a case for most of them, couldn't you? Which is probably the right answer.
Which is the right
isn't
answer, isn't it?
it? Probably the right thing to have created. But,
Yeah.
I'd like to uncreate flares.
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
How would you
Or people who wear
alert someone?
flares.
How would you alert the Coast Guard to your peril, though?
How many is that? 4.
I think it's almost there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've lost
just
count.
about there.
Yeah.
4 or
So
5.
that's
Yeah.
an interesting way
Interesting
of putting
one,
the
isn't it?
question, actually, to uncreate things.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to, yes.
I feel like I've got power to just zap things and then they don't exist anymore.
That's right.
It's quite
yeah.
scary, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one to ponder on, I think. But
Yeah.
I think you've done very well there.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yes, thank you. And,
Superb.
Simon, I'm pleased to know that your random questions are just as ridiculous as they've ever been. Although, actually, to be fair, that was almost quite sensible.
thank you.
But anyway, that was...
Simon's Random Question.
And now that we've got that nonsense out of the way, it just remains for me to thank you, Ian, for being such a good sport. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And dear listeners, thank you for joining us once again in 2022. We look forward to bringing you yet more Take a Pew fun throughout the year. You can keep up to date with all the Take a Pew goings on our Facebook page or on Instagram or Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to and like our channel however you are listening to the show. That would be great. And with that, it's Toodle Pip from me.
And tatty bye from me.
Join us again next time as we take a pew.